The 22nd flew sub-patrol on the west coast, then dismantled its planes, and they were shipped to Hawaii, where they were reassembled, and then they went on to Australia. In Australia, the 22nd Bomb Group was based at Townsville, but to fly a mission, it had first to fly to 7 Mile Airfield at Port Smoresby in New Guinea, there to refuel, and then fly the mission. And they flew their first mission on April the 5th, 1942. And Chris Kilgus was on that mission.
We had just arrived in Australia a couple of days before. We flew on up to Townsville, and they put two 1,000-pound I put two 1,000-pound bombs on my airplane, our airplane. And that afternoon, they came around and said, take your two 1,000-pound bombs out and put these 24 100-pound bombs on. So I said, okay. My crew chief, Sergeant Beaucamp, had gone to chow at lunch, and on his return, I had already taken the nose fuse and the tail fuses out, and when I could see, I was standing up in the bomb bay, and I could see his shoes when they come underneath there, and so I released one of those 1,000-pound bombs. And Beaucamp to this day hadn't forgiven me, but he was moving fast, but he wasn't going anyplace. So never again, he said, let that happen, and I never did let that happen again when he was around. It was decided when they put the 100-pound bombs on that we were to have a definite part in the raid the next day. We flew on to, from Townsville to Port Moresby in New Guinea. It's a 3-hour flight over water all the way. And we got to Port Moresby, and they had two runways, one called 7 Mile and one called 3 Mile. The 3 Mile was a fighter strip. The 7 Mile was for B-17s, B-26s. Whatever they had was at the 7 Mile field. The B-26 always took off downhill. The runway ran up and down. We took off downhill regardless of the wind. It didn't make any difference. We had 3,000 feet of mesh runway, and then the overrun we had was just nothing but dirt and gravel. So you see, we had to have the difference of the elevation to get up to speed. When we arrived at Port Moresby, there was nothing. It was jungle and lots of mosquitoes, millions of mosquitoes. Of course, we had flown 3 hours from Townsville up there to get ready for the mission, and no gas trucks came out. Natives come rolling out 55-gallon drums of gasoline, so then we had to crank it into the airplane for refueling. And incidentally, we always used a chamois to put over the gas tank to keep the water and condensation out of it, because you didn't want to be out 2 hours over the water and go, hoot, hoot, you know, and you're looking around, what's going on? But it did help. That chamois always stayed in our airplanes. We were brief, well, let me carry on a little bit. At Port Moresby, there was no tents, no billeting, no food, no nothing, except these B-26s that had flown up there. And we ended up having to sleep on the wing of the airplane that night, because the higher off the ground you were, the less mosquitoes there were. And that was a help. Then we found out there was an aluminum shack up at the end of the runway, another 500 yards or so, called Sloppy Joe's. And we had hardtack crackers, orange marmalade, baked bean sandwiches, and coffee, and a little bit of water that wasn't too tasty. Needless to say, that night was very hectic. Then the next morning, sun came up. We were briefed for about 10 minutes on the fact that we had a picture showing us the runways at Lacanau Aerodrome, and this was at Rabaul. That was where our mission was going, Rabaul, New Britain. And the guy says, I can't tell you what the weather's going to be because you all flew through it hedge-hopping islands from Hawaii, and you know from 15 minutes now what's going to be 30 minutes, you had no idea. So we went down, and there was no control tower. All there was just this 7 mile strip downhill. And at a scheduled time, we went out. Now, they tried, and this was proven later, we took off around 9 o'clock all the time when we bombed Rabaul. We'd get up to Rabaul at noon, 3-hour flight up there, make our mission, do the bombing, turn around and come back, 6-hour mission. In the meantime, the Japanese were bombing Port Moresby and the 7-mile runway. The engineers, the engineering battalion that they had there of some natives, some Afro-Americans, whatever, but they all had pitch and shovels and carrying on, filling up bomb craters, and they did a good job. Needless to say, we didn't break any landing gears or nose wheels when we came back, but it was because of them. The mission took off. We had 9 airplanes. 2 of us, my crew, which was flown, our pilot was then Second Lieutenant Richard Walker Robinson, better known in later days as Robbie, who was the leader of the Red Raiders of the 22nd Bomb Group. And we had a wingman in his crew, and his name was Second Lieutenant Tad Ford. And both of us had 100-pound bombs on. We were to bomb the runways. The other airplanes had 500-pound and 1,000-pound bombs on, 2 1,000 or 4 500s. And then we had a bomb bay tank in the left side of the front bomb bay. And my plane, with the bomb bay tank in the left side, we had 1,200-pound bombs on the right side, and we used the rear bomb bay in the original B-26, and we had 12 100-pound bombs in the rear bomb bay. We take off. After takeoff, you have to go over the Owen Stanley mountain range. So you fly over the jungle for 30 or 40 minutes and go up through a pass instead of having to go over the mountain range, Owen Stanley. We went through this pass. As soon as we got through the pass, we went back down on the water, and Gazmata was over on our left as we were flying toward Rabaul. And there was a Japanese air base there, and we didn't want to get picked up by radar or whatever. And so we got back right down on the water, 100 feet or so, and flew on to Rabaul. Now, at our briefing, which was very brief, I was told that there was a volcano that was semi-active, and we would see smoke from that, and that would be our signal that we were getting close to Rabaul. Otherwise, just dead reckoning navigation. So, and over water, you don't do too much dead reckoning navigation.